is Rizk, and he's a biomedical science student at the University of Guelph, Ontario. He came to Canada 8 years ago, and he did not speak any English at all. And after 3 years from arriving, he scored the highest for academic average in Jean Vanier Catholic Secondary School in Milton, Ontario. He continued to score highest average in grade 11, graduated in grade 12 with the Governor General Academic Medal. In his undergraduate studies, he scored the top 10 cumulative average in the College of Biological Sciences, and he wishes to pursue a career in the field of medicine. And here is
Thank you for that. When I first got here, I thought I was going to be the youngest one presenting, or just the youngest one at the conference, until I saw the gentleman sitting outside on the stroller. So I think he wins that. She wins that. And also, coming back from lunch, I hope I don't put anyone to sleep. So that will be my goal today. Okay. So unsure of the exact location of Richard's residence, I felt quite timid approaching the presupposed house. After knocking and waiting a few seconds at the door, I seemed to hear the words, "Avanti, avanti," or come in, come in. But I still wasn't so sure I was in the right house. Once the door opened, something quite peculiar, yet oddly familiar, struck my eyes. On the dinner table, there lay a bottle of wine. Undoubtedly, I must have been inside an Italian home. Hello, everyone. So my name is Abanoub Aziz. I'm a fourth-year biomedical science student studying at the University of Guelph in Ontario. It is my absolute pleasure to be here amongst this fantastic audience. I'm here to just share a little bit about my story. To many of you, Abanoub may not strike as a common Italian name, and you would be right to assume otherwise. I'm from Cairo, a citizen of the country of Egypt. Well, something like that. My favorite food are lasagna forno. Yes, I was happy yesterday. My favorite city is Torino. My favorite movie is Pinocchio. And every World Cup, except the last one, I hold my flag up and I scream Forza Azzurri. Egyptian, you say? Well, to the world, Egyptian I will remain. I was born in Italy on a cold winter day on December 15, 1997, in the Sant'Anna Hospital at the outskirts of Torino in Piemonte. My parents emigrated from Egypt a few years before, looking for better job opportunities, better education, and just better quality of life overall. I attended a small elementary school, also by the name of Sant'Anna, in which I learned everything, including the Italian language, which actually became my first language, along with Italian history, geography, politics. So what it meant to be Italian was truly engraved into me. On the other hand, my parents were not Italian citizens, and due to that fact, neither myself nor my two little brothers, who were also born in Italy, Abramo and Antonio, were eligible to apply for Italian citizenship. We were strangers in a place we called home. During 2008, the instability in the economy made it tougher and tougher for my parents to find a stable job. So they decided to follow my uncle's footsteps and apply for Canadian immigration. We officially moved on April 9, 2009. And while the first few years in Canada were a bit of a blur, I surely do remember saying the words, "I am from Italy," over and over and over again, as that was the only sentence I knew how to say in English. Another funny story is there was a friend in grade 7 who I truly detested. Every time before a test, he would come up to me and tell me, "Break a leg." So I never really understood that. It surely wasn't easy, but a few years later, I learned the language and finally became leblib, or in Arabic meaning fluent. I'm currently studying biomedical sciences, and I'm working really hard to hopefully pursue a career in the field of medicine. So during the years we spent in Canada, my parents would speak to my brothers and I in Arabic, because our group of friends, our church, community, and our relatives were all from Egypt. I became part of a completely different culture. By the beginning of my undergraduate studies, I had trouble formulating simple sentences in Italian, which also meant who I was also changing. I felt a disconnect with my friends from home, and yet I initially also felt a disconnect with my friends here in Canada. This metamorphosis of social identity became problematic because I myself was unsure of who I was. When I was in Italy, I was known as the Egyptian friend. In Canada, my nickname, all my friends call me Italian. And when I speak to my aunts and uncles in Egypt, I am their Canadian nephew. During my first year of undergrad, I had the privilege to begin what now became a beautiful journey of reconnecting with my Italian roots. The journey began with introductory Italian language classes and the guidance of wonderful mentors like Professor Sandra Parmigiani, who I owe everything, would not be here today if it wasn't for her. I continued to get involved with the Gulf Italian community. I was introduced to the Italian Heritage Project, which is a project that works in collaboration with ICAP with the aim to collect and preserve artifacts and stories of Italian Canadian immigrants, while providing fantastic opportunities for students and the wider community to get involved. It is surely a collective effort with a large array of possibilities and opportunities. I was lucky and privileged, to say the least, to have been part and to be part of such a great initiative. Unlike traditional research courses, the Italian Heritage Project course offered at the University of Guelph, under supervision of Professor Sandra Parmigiani, involved an experiential learning opportunity in which students could actually interview members of the community and experience firsthand the rich treasures concealed in the stories of Italian immigrants. Amazing, I know. The project I worked on fell under the oral history umbrella. Oral history has variously been described as the interview of the eye participants in the events of the past for the purposes of historical reconstruction. Oral history narrative is able to reveal alternative perspectives, particularly if collected from groups previously excluded from the historic record, for reasons of political, geographical, class, gender, or ethnic affiliation. It allows immigrants to tell their stories in their own ways. Oral history does not supplement the historic record, but may actually create a historic narrative completed through oral research. Not infrequently, oral history research leads to advocacy, as a scholar attempts to come to terms with the question, why has the story been excluded from the historic record? And may lead to growing campaigns to rectify the wrongdoings committed against Italian immigrants. It also acknowledges the efforts of those who stood up for what is right. Oral history validates personal experience previously suppressed or misunderstood, documents emerging realities, and may even profoundly empower socially political or economically marginalized groups, which can therefore be considered a democratizing force. One of the inherent value of such a multivocality resulting from the first-hand testimony is its ability to qualify, even to counter and erode prevailing ethnic stereotypes. A major task assumed by scholars of Italian folklore is to recover traditional knowledge and often to present it to the general public via exhibits and festivals, like many that we host in Guelph. Providing students of Italian heritage direct access to a more intimate knowledge of the forms of Italian culture in tune with their own family experiences is truly transformative, believe me. Despite the large number of Italian studies programs around the country, only a few support the field of oral history. I am proud to have been part of one in Guelph. While studying Italian culture through literature analysis provides a strong insight on culture, experiencing it firsthand through field collected material is a totally different, unique experience. To get a true taste of Italian culture, it is vital that a student comes face to face with a variety of Italian experiences and specific voices in their communities. Interviews conducted in the field of oral history not only focus on the perspective of the individual being talked to, but also on the experience and thoughts of the historian or the interviewer during and after the meeting. Multimedia and digital archives relating to the Italian-Canadian experience are growing as oral history projects multiply. Such archives may document important aspects of immigrant experience, but only a fraction are ever digitized or published. It is our role as conservators of the rich Italian culture to expand and make this treasure more accessible. You may now be wondering how that suspenseful story of a bottle of wine had anything to do with why I'm here today. Well, I had the privilege to interview a really special member of the Guelph Italian community, Mr. Richard Gazzola. The moment I described was the first encounter I had with him at his own home. I was fortunate enough to spend time with him at the dinner table and to listen to the rich past of his unique and remarkable story. Richard's immensely successful life and strong attachment to his Italian roots truly struck me and gave me many lessons to learn from. In many ways, Richard's story parallels my own life. At some point, we were both foreigners living in a place away from home. As soon as I walked into the house, I was given a very warm welcome. I was offered something to drink and eat, making me truly reminisce the beautiful days of my own life in Italy. The loving nature of this magnificent culture, my magnificent culture, was all enclosed in the character I was meeting. After introducing myself to Richard, we quickly developed a strong connection as he understood what it meant to having to acclimatize to a new way of life. Although Richard was born in Canada, he lived with an Italian family who greatly valued their Italian roots. More importantly, they lived their life the same way Trevisani lived in Italy during the late 1800s. Throughout his life, Richard continued to show excellence in his education and valued the importance of school. Richard dedicated years to the study of engineering, and later in life also pursued a career to become a lawyer, a professional lawyer. I know, an engineer and a lawyer. Richard's rich past renders him a unique individual amongst the Italian Guelph community, a culture frozen in time. That's how Richard likes to describe his Italian roots. Richard's Italian origins go back many years to the time his grandmother lived on Italian soil. The language and culture remain deeply attached to Richard's life. I would like to share with you today a snippet of one of the most interesting stories he has shared with me throughout this year journey. Richard described to me a vacation which eventually became extremely dear to his heart, a vacation that transcended the barrier of time and made him return to the place frozen in his memory, which he called home. Rio Grande do Sul was a magical place in Richard's eyes. This small town located on Brazilian soil meant a great deal to Richard because it was populated by Italians whose culture, just like his, was also frozen in time. During the late 1800s, there was a massive migration of Italians to this location due to political and financial crisis back home. Most immigrants were poor peasants from Trentino and Veneto in northern Italy, who were fascinated by the vast presence of land in this region of Brazil. Many of the small farmers cultivated grapes and lived fairly simple lives, reminiscent of the life back home. The lifestyle of the Brazilian residents was very similar to the one Richard's grandmother would always speak about. In many ways, Richard's visits to Brazil resembled his Italian roots, more than visiting the same physical place his family came from. The difference was that people in Italy were immensely affected by the development of technology and globalization, while those in Brazil froze in time and, in many ways, were disconnected from the world. One example that illustrates this was when Richard saw something in Brazil that he himself could not believe. One of the local residents was rolling a cigarette with the scartoce della penoche, which involved rolling paper made of starch. When Richard asked the resident whether it was indeed what he thought, the resident himself was surprised. Richard had always heard of this concept, but never seen it in person, and would probably never see it on Italian soil. Now, I'd like to share with you a very small snippet of a video I put together of some of the pictures of Richard and I. And in the background, you'll actually hear Richard's very unique dialect. So hopefully it works.
Allora, mio nonno mi contava le storie, allora io conoscevo questo libro così. E non è che contami le storie Bartoldo, Bartoldello e Traveseno. E a me penso che mi contano le storie di mio papà e mio dosi. Tutti in modo grazie che sei valori. Mi penso qui, perché là è Bartoldo del Travesino. Senza scherzo. E viene fuori, contami. Pure non. Allora mi viene così, allora io a casa mia mamma lavorava qualche volta, mio papà lavorava nell'industria, allora là io finiscevo a fare il mangiato, la pasta asciutta, roba così.
So I have to cut it short. But the video's there for all of you to see on YouTube. Now, a few years later, I moved to Canada. My family decided to travel back and spend a small vacation in Italy. We were asked to provide our Egyptian passport, and we went through the foreigner visitor gate, a bit as if the 11 years I spent in Italy never really existed. In the same way that I felt like I did not fully belong, Richard also felt the same way when he traveled back to Treviso. He described this when he told me Giuseppe, the Italian name I acquired. I was in Treviso giving a speech to the local Italians, but there were words I said that they themselves could not understand. We did not understand each other. Through our reshaping of identity, a bond was quickly formed between us due to my personal story as an Egyptian, Italian, Canadian immigrant, and Richard as a Trevisano, Italian, Canadian immigrant, which made us both feel like strangers in a place we once called home. Now, for my favorite part of this whole presentation, being somewhat of a non-traditional presenter, a science student, giving a presentation at a conference focused on language and culture, I decided to bring to you something a bit special. I always loved science, experiments, and so I decided I would conduct one in front of you today. It is a fairly dangerous experiment, so I will put on my pair of safety goggles. In the lab, we like to call this experiment making a cup of tea. I have here a silicon dioxide cup, a glass cup. And I will be submerging. Always have a spare tea bag in your pocket. I will be submerging this chemical mixture of, whoops, as long as it doesn't explode. A chemical mixture of esterified fragrances, organic herbal residues, and a field-collected mint leaf into a dangerously poured cup of dihydrogen monoxide. Tap water. Here it is. It's still warm. Now, surely I must explain, or else I'll never be invited to another conference again. This dangerously performed science experiment was meant to represent the concept of social identity formation. The tea bag represents who we are when we're born, our genetic makeup, our imprinted identity. Alone, the tea bag is there. It exists, but it doesn't fulfill its full purpose by just being in my hand. In contrast, when the tea bag was submerged in water, its environment, things were very different. The tea bag's full potential was reached, its role, its function, its purpose was achieved. The water here represents the society we're surrounded by. Who we are when we're born is not the same as who we are following the lifelong process of socialization. Now the water represents our culture, one culture. The special thing about immigration is that the same tea bag learns to adapt to a new environment. Our true identity, formulated by the environment we're surrounded by, formulated by the environment we're surrounded by. It is the combination of the two that makes a cup of tea such a beautiful thing. My story, Richard's story, and many other immigrant stories are special because of both the composition of our tea bag and our ability to adapt and reform the the composition of our environments. Now, the mint leaf, you ask? I just like the extra flavor. In conclusion, preserving cultural heritage links one's personal stories with the identity of Canada, which itself was founded by immigrants. Remembering our predecessors' roles in shaping Canada makes it hard to feel detached from the issue of immigration. By remembering our own personal nations of history, we distance ourselves from a nativist mentality and introduce an all-encompassing culture. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a great presentation. Our next speaker is Michael Minato, who has been invaluable today in helping with technology.